By Sri Lanka's best internet package for online learning and online working with many amazing offers. Call 1212 for more information. Sri Lanka Telecom.
ලෙන්ගතුකම වැඩි කරගන්න ලව්ජු රුපියල් 50ට අඩු කළා.
මාමේ එන්න අපිට එකක් බොමු.
Good evening. In your headlines tonight, agree to compensate. Owners of MT New Diamond agree to fully settle 340 million rupees to Sri Lanka as compensation after the recent oil slick in Sri Lankan waters. Distressed. The then IGP was severely distressed due to actions of former president during the period leading up to and after Easter attacks. Commission issues warnings against former president and 4 others. Shot dead. Notorious criminal Kudu Roha shot dead during an exchange of gunfire with police. Fresh case. Russian airline crew member contracts Covid19. 150 associates identified after scrutinizing local contact points. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9. This Thursday, the 24th of September, 2020.
නව sunlight sakura දැන් දිකුකල් පවතින sakura මල් සුවඳින්.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
A warm welcome. I'm Indivari Amuatta. We take a look at your top story tonight. The owners of the New Diamond super tanker, which caught fire off the seas of eastern Sri Lanka with a cargo of 2 million barrels of oil aboard, have agreed to pay 340 million rupees to the Sri Lankan government for costs incurred in extinguishing the blaze and averting disaster. Coordinating officer for the Attorney General, State Counsel Nishara Jaratna, said the lawyers representing the oil tanker agreed to pay the entirety of the initial claim made by the Attorney General for services provided by the Sri Lankan Navy, Air Force, Ports Authority and Marine Environmental Protection Authority from the period of September 3rd to September 15th. Now, the Attorney General has also submitted a further claim of 100 million rupees. In a separate development, the panel of scientists appointed by the Marine Environmental Authority to investigate the marine pollution caused by the crude oil tanker has submitted its report to Attorney General today.
The Sri Lanka Navy and Coast Guard, along with the Indian Coast Guard as well as the Sri Lanka Air Force, engaged in continuous operation for a period of nearly 10 days after the MT New Diamond, a very large crude carrier with 270 tons of crude oil on board, caught fire off the eastern coast on the 3rd of September. On the 16th of September, Attorney General Dapula Dilivera had submitted an interim claim to lawyers representing the New Diamond oil tanker for initial upfront costs incurred by the Sri Lankan government in dousing the fire and handling of the ship and rescue efforts. In response to the claim, the owners of the New Diamond crude oil tanker today informed the Attorney General of their agreement to fully settle the interim claim of 340 million rupees, about $1.84 million to stakeholders of the Sri Lankan government. Insurance of the vessel West of England will settle the bill for the claim, seeking to compensate costs related to assistance provided by parties including the Sri Lanka Navy, Sri Lanka Air Force, Sri Lanka Ports Authority, Colombo Dockyard, Marine Environment Protection Authority and the Department of Coast Conservation.
The Attorney General has also submitted an interim expert report compiled by professors of 5 universities together with experts of NARA and MIPA with regard to the marine pollution. Upon receipt of the final expert's report, the damage caused to the marine environment will be estimated and a claim would be forwarded to the owners of the vessel for settlement in due course. The oil tanker MT New Diamond will be given safe passage under the supervision of the Navy in order it may exit from the exclusive economic zone of Sri Lanka.
The New Diamond, loaded with Kuwaiti oil, is chartered by Indian Oil Corporation and is currently 66 nautical miles from Batticaloa. Greece-based Porto Emporios Shipping Incorporated is a registered owner of the 20-year-old Panama flag carrier, and the ship's managers, New Shipping Limited, have appointed SMIT Singapore Private Limited to lead salvage operations.
Enjoy a very smooth shave with the Bic Easy 2 razor. Bic Easy 2.
Former IGP Pujit Jayasundara today revealed before the Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter Sunday attacks that he suffered severe mental distress owing to actions of former President Maithripala Sirisena in the lead-up to the Easter spate of terror. He made this revelation when he testified before the Commission for a third day today. Meanwhile, the Commission today warned the former President, his private secretary and the 3 auxiliary bishops of the Archdiocese of Colombo to not issue any communiques regarding the Commission's ongoing proceedings.
The Presidential Commission of Inquiry probing the Easter spate of terror yesterday issued notice to former President Maithripala Sirisena and his private secretary to appear before the Commission in connection with a communique issued by his private secretary accusing former Defence Secretary Hemasiri Fernando of lying before the Commission. However, former President Maithripala Sirisena did not appear before the Commission this morning and was represented by President's Counsel Maitri Punaratna. The private secretary to the former President Samira De Silva too appeared before the Commission this morning. Notices were also issued for the 3 auxiliary bishops of the Archdiocese of Colombo to appear before the Presidential Commission this morning with regard to the issuance of a statement rejecting allegations made by MP Harin Fernando that the Cardinal may have had prior knowledge about the Easter attacks. Accordingly, Auxiliary Bishop of the Archdiocese of Colombo, His Lordship Right Reverend Dr. Maxwell De Silva, appeared before the Commission. Commenting on the controversial communiques, the chairman of the commission issued warnings to the former president, his private secretary and the 3 auxiliary bishops of the Archdiocese of Colombo to not issue such statements in future over ongoing proceedings of the commission. Meanwhile, Pujit Jayasundara, who was the Inspector General of Police at the time of the Easter attack, was called to testify before the commission for the 3rd day today. During the proceedings of the commission, the IGP said, quote, "Despite former President Maithripala Sirisena instructing the police to not conduct an open investigation into Islamic extremism in the beginning of 2018, I instructed the CID to inquire into the murder of Vaunathu police officers, the vandalizing of Buddha statues in Mavanalla and the discovery of explosives in Vanathavilluva," unquote. The Additional Solicitor General then questioned the IGP, quote, "Isn't that disobeying the orders of the President?" unquote. In response, the IGP said, quote, "Yes, I disobeyed. I was helpless due to the situation. Do I to tell this to my senior officers that the President gave me such instructions? I could not take advice from anyone. I was helpless to the point that I could not even discuss about this anyone," unquote. The IGP went on to say that, quote, "There was a police athletic event. Around 6,000 to 7,000 police officers were to participate. I invited then President as well as the then Minister of Defence Maithripala Sirisena to participate in the event. The President refused the invitation, saying that he needs to be at Bandaravilla, and then asked me to speak to the Secretary. Then I called the Secretary to the Ministry of Defence. He too was reluctant at first and finally came to the event late. The Defence Secretary received a call from the President. He told me the President would call me, and he did call me. From whom did you get approval to hold such events with this amount of officers? What is this event? The President questioned me. I told him that this was the police athletic event. He asked me, quote, "With whom are you holding such events?" unquote. For which I replied saying, quote, "I informed the Secretary about the event," unquote. The President furiously questioned me, quote, "How can you invite the Secretary? Don't you know that you are supposed to inform me?" unquote. I with a low voice responded, quote, "Sorry sir, I invited you. Since you refused it, I managed to bring the Secretary late," unquote. The President then asked me, quote, "When did you inform me? I'll take care of this," unquote. And then he hung up on me. Testifying before the commission, the IGP became emotional, saying, quote, "I was under a lot of stress because of such incidents. I had no way of sharing this to anyone. When the President declared me and the then Defence Secretary responsible for the Easter attacks, and when it was given continuous publicity by media, I chose not to utter a single word to media, not even via the police media spokesperson, because he was the executive president of the country, as well as the minister in charge of defence. As a disciplined officer, I made no statements. I spoke for the first time at the Parliamentary Select Committee, that too with permission." The IGP added that, quote, Although the Commission has so far uncovered some facts regarding the Easter attack, I have a lot of undisclosed facts. What did the head of state say when there was so much destruction after the attack? He said he didn't know, he wasn't told, and that he is not responsible. He said the IGP and the Defence Secretary should be held responsible, unquote. The IGP testified, quote, "Not in the history has there been a tradition of the IGP informing the President about intelligence. I was present when the intelligence services testified here. The SIS said the entity does not have enough officers and enough facilities, but it was the state intelligence that received full facilities and privileges from the Ministry of Defence. They received more increments than the others. They only had one subject to cover. How much funds does the Ministry of Defence secretly pass for the State Intelligence Service? It is not even audited," unquote. Meanwhile, the then State Minister of Defence Ruwan Wijewardena arrived to testify before the Commission this evening.
6 more petitions challenging the draft bill of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution were filed with the Supreme Court today. The petitions were placed by former Governor of Southern Province and former Executive Director of the Campaign for Free and Fair Elections, Rajat Kirti Tennakoon, and 5 other parties, citing the Attorney General as its respondent. A total of 12 petitions have been filed against the 20th Amendment so far. The draft of the 20th Amendment to the Constitution was presented to Parliament on Tuesday, and its second reading will take place 3 weeks from when the Supreme Court begins hearing of petitions filed against the amendment. The government said earlier that any amendments to the draft will be made at committee stage following the second reading.
අපි විශ්වාස කරන විදිහට 19 වෙනි සංශෝධනයේ ජනාධිපතිතුමාට එතුමාගේ රාජකාරිය ගන්න කිසිම බාධාවක් වෙන්නේ නැහැ. අපි දකින එක ගැටලුවක් තමයි ආරක්ෂක අමාත්‍යාංශය එතුමාට රැක ගැනීමට බැරිකම ඊට අමතරව අපි නම් කිසි දෙයක් දකින්නේ නැහැ. වගේම කාලයක් තිබුණා ව්‍යවස්ථාදායක සභාව මේ පත්වීම් වලට බාධා කරනවා. ඒක සම්පූර්ණයෙන්ම අමූලික බොරුවක්. පොලිස්පතිගේ ඉඳලා අධිකරණ ශේෂ්ත්‍රයේ ඕන තැනක කරපු සෑම නමක්ම අපි ජනාධිපතිතුමා විසින් කරන නම් ව්‍යවස්ථාදායක සභාවේ සමාජිකයෝ 10 දෙනා එකතු වෙලා බහුතර මතය අනුව අපි ඒ තීරණ ගන්නවා. මේ විශ්ව සංශෝධන තුලින් අපි දකිනවා මේ රට ඒකාධිපත්‍යකාර ගමන් කිරීම.
ප්‍රධාන වශයෙන් අපි දකිනවා මේ ආණ්ඩුවේ ප්‍රතිරූපයේ විනාශ වෙන රට අනතුරටපත් වෙන කරුණු තුනක්. පළවෙනි එක තමයි හදිසි පනත් සම්මත කිරීමට අවස්ථාව ලබා ගැනීම. දෙවෙනි කාරණේ තමයි දුත්ත පුරවැසි භාවය පිළිබඳ ප්‍රශ්නේ. මහ බැංකු කොල්ලයෙන් පස්සේ විදේශීය පුරවැසියෙක් ඇවිල්ලා ඒ කරලා ගියපු විනාශයත් එක්ක සමාජයේ ප්‍රබල මතයක් තියෙනවා. තානාපතිවරුන්ටත් දුත්ත පුරවැසි භාවය තිබේ නම් අවස්ථාව ලබා නොදී යුතුයි කියලා. තුන්වෙනි කාරණේ තමයි රාජ්‍ය සමාගම් විගණනය කළ නොහැක කියන ප්‍රතිපාදනය ඇතුල් කරොත් මේ පරීක්ෂණ ඔක්කොම නවතිනවා. ඒතර පාර්ලිමේන්තුවේ මුදල් බලයට විශාල අභියෝගයක් සිද්ධ වෙනවා මේ වගන්තිය. අපි ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා මෙන්න මේ ප්‍රධාන සංශෝධන තුන සිදු කළ යුතුමයි.
ඕනම රටකට නායකයෝ ඉන්න ඕනේ එක්කෙනයි. 19 වෙනි සංශෝධනයෙන් කරපු විකෘතිය තමයි නායකයෝ 3 දෙනෙක් බී කරා. විධායකයේ 3ට කැඩුවා. එකම වාහනේ රියදුරු 3 දෙනෙක් තුන් පැත්තට එලවන්න හදනවා කියලා. වාහනේ ඉස්සරහට ඇයිද? 2015 2020 වසර 5ේදී අපේ රට එකතැන පල්වීමට ප්‍රධානම හේතුව 19 වෙනි සංශෝධනයයි කියලා ලංකාවට උපදෙස් දෙන The Heritage Foundation කියන ඇමරිකානු පර්යේෂණ ආයතනය කියනවා. 19 පාර්ලිමේන්තුවට ගෙනාපු මෛත්‍රීපාල සිරිසේන මහත්තයා කියනවා.
නව ව්‍යවස්ථාවක් ගෙනකන් සංක්‍රාන්ති සමයක් තමයි මේ ගත කරන්න වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක නිසා 20 වෙනි සංශෝධනය හරහා බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ ඒ හරහා පසුගිය කාලේ මතු කරපු ගැටලු මතු නොවි ආණ්ඩුව ක්‍රමවත් ඉස්සරහට ගෙන යාමනේ. මේ නව ව්‍යවස්ථාව තමයි අපි කාගෙත් බලාපොරොත්තු.
We'll find out about what's happening in Sri Lanka pertaining to COVID-19 when we return after this break.
Ceylon Bank, the bank with a heart.
A Russian flight attendant who arrived in the country recently tested positive for coronavirus COVID-19 during his stay at a private hotel in Mathura, although he was cleared after the first PCR test upon arrival to Sri Lanka. So far, about 150 associates who came into contact with the infected Russian national have been identified, and steps are being taken to isolate the group. However, later today, another PCR test conducted on the individual by the Hambantota Hospital has come out negative, calling for yet another PCR test on the said individual. Now, the Russian national will undergo another PCR test tomorrow to fully determine his diagnosis. Meanwhile, 3 arrivals from Qatar, Maldives and the UAE respectively have also been tested positive for COVID-19.
15 members of a Russian-based airline crew arrived in Sri Lanka via the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport on the 13th of this month. Upon arrival, the group underwent PCR tests at the airport, during which they were cleared negative for the virus. The group, who had chosen a hotel in Polhena, Matara, for their stay upon arrival to Sri Lanka, underwent their second PCR test at a private hospital. One person from among the group was tested positive for COVID-19 after the second PCR test. Accordingly, officials of the Office of the Matara Medical Officer of Health arrived at the hotel last night to examine the infected crew member. After studying the contact places of the group while in Sri Lanka so far, the MOH of the Matara Municipal Council said such locations were identified. PCR testing of the first and the second circle of individuals associated with infected Russian national began today. Later this evening, however, it was revealed that the PCR test obtained from the infected individual at the Hambantota hospital has come out negative. Accordingly, health officials have ordered another PCR test on the individual in order to determine whether he contracted the virus. The rest of the 14 nationals were taken to the Mattala Rajapaksa International Airport by Sri Lanka Army this afternoon to fly out of the island to Russia tomorrow. Meanwhile, the total number of COVID-19 cases identified in the country to date stands at 3,327. 3,142 of the total cases were granted permission to return to their daily lives, bringing down the active cases in Sri Lanka to 172.
A wanted criminal who went by the alias Kuduroha was shot and killed by the police today during an exchange of gunfire. Now, police launched an operation to arrest Kuduroha after a tip-off of the suspect's plans to flee to India by sea. Now, here's a look at the latest developments on Sri Lanka's war on drugs and the underworld.
The crime division of the Western Province North conducted a search operation following a tip-off that Harold Rohana de Silva, alias Kuduroha, is attempting to flee to India via coast of Kochikade using a trawler. The police had then attempted to enter the safe house in which the suspect was said to be hiding. The suspect, however, had opened fire on the police during the process. The police had then returned fire, during which the suspect had sustained injuries. Though he was admitted to the hospital, the suspect succumbed. In the meantime, the Negombo magistrate inspected the scene of the incident this afternoon. The police also found both local and foreign currency from the travelling bags of deceased suspect Roha, while a revolver and a T-56 firearm were also seized. Roha is a wanted suspect in several murders, including the murder of criminal gang member identified as Lansia in Ratmalana. Meanwhile, the rival of Roha, identified as Amal Singhara, alias Kuduwanju, had commented on the recent events on Facebook from Italy, where he is hiding. He insists that the remains of Roha be kept away from Ratmalana while threatening to kill any person who attends Roha's funeral. In another development, the crime division of the Western Province South arrested 2 associates of Kuduwanju yesterday from the areas of Bolavalana and Katunayaka in Negombo. The arrests were made following interrogations of a drug racketeer arrested in May. It has been revealed that a sum of over 400 million rupees has been transacted in just 6 months via the bank accounts of the arrested suspects. Meanwhile, an associate of criminal gang member Poo Gudikannam, named Kudulal, was arrested today by the police special task force with 27 grams of heroin, 8 grams of crystal methamphetamine, commonly known as ice, and over 1 million rupees in his possession. In a separate development, the Colombo High Court today sentenced a fishmonger to death for possessing and smuggling 106 grams of heroin in 1998.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa today urged for the implementation of a student-centered education system in Sri Lanka instead of examination-centered education. Now, the head of state notes that issues that have arisen in the job market in Sri Lanka are due to the lack of educational reforms in the last few years.
විශ්වවිද්‍යාල අධ්‍යාපනය ලබා දෙන්න කිව්වට ඒක හුදෙක්ම අර ඩිග්‍රී එකක් නොවෙන්න ඕන. අපි 60000කට ආසන්නව උපාධිධාරීන් බඳව ගත්තා. දැන් මේ උපාධිධාරීන්ගෙන් 36000ක්ද කොහෙද බාහිර උපාධිධාරීන්. හැබැයි බාහිර උපාධිධාරීන් වුණාට මේ කට්ටිය කරලා තියෙන්නේ අර වගේම කොහේ හරි තියෙන විෂයන් තුනක් අරගෙන උපාධියක් ගන්නවා. මේක තමයි අපි වෙනස් කරන්න ඕනට ඉක්මනින්ම. විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය කියන්නේ අපි මේ රටේ තරුණ තරුණියන්ගේ ක්‍රීම් එකනේ. දැන් මේ ක්‍රීම් එක විශ්වවිද්‍යාල වලට ගිහිල්ලා මෙතන එනවා දහස් ගණන් පෙළපාලියේ. ඉතින් මේක අනිවාර්යෙන් මෙතන වැරද්දක් තියෙන බව පේනවා. තියෙනවනේ. මේ ළමයි ඔක්කොම මෙතෙන්ට එන එකෙන්ම තේරෙනවා ඒගොල්ලෝ එන්නේ රැස්සාවක් හැටියට. හැබැයි මේ රැස්සාව අපි බලා ගන්නට ඕන රටේ ආර්ථිකයට වැදගත් වෙන, රටේ සංවර්ධනයට වැදගත් වෙන විදිහේ දැනුමක් ඒ ළමයි හරහා අරගෙන ඒක දෙන්න.
And we take a short commercial break to return with more news. Welcome back. The Ministry of Finance said that 9.6 billion rupees of bills certifying payment arrears had been issued to contractors who can use them as collateral to obtain money from banks. Now, the ministry said 303 suppliers had been issued with the certification letters for services performed in the years 2019 and up to 2020, 31st of May. All letters have been issued by the 31st of August. Of that, 116 are related to Education Ministry and 109 related to suppliers and contractors of Highways Ministry. Now, the bills will be settled in installment by the Treasury by crediting their respective accounts. Moving on to take a look at trading today, Sri Lanka's stocks closed 0.68% higher as a result of price gains in a number of counters. The S&P SL20, however, closed 4.09 points down at 2,481.92. The all share price index closed in green, 39.10 points up at 5,811.20. Market turnover was 430.6 million rupees, where 121 stocks gained and 68 fell. Here's a brief look at how markets performed today.
The market saw a rebound after yesterday's short selling pressure which drove the market down. Today the market rebounded back by 39 points. However, the S&P SL20 saw a bit of a downtrend of 4 points. So the downtrend of the S&P was mainly led by some of the illiquid blue chip counters, Selingco Insurance and AdaDerana. However, the upsurge in the index was mainly driven by retail and high net worth individual investors with the mid-cap counters. We saw the index surge past 2.8 billion rupees, again one of the high turnover levels that we've seen. So the high turnover levels in the market has been continuing over the past few weeks as well, and today also that trend has been continuing. However, if we take the foreign front, we saw continued selling pressure, however, onto the high side today, with a net foreign outflow of around 518 million rupees.
Taking you to the currency market, the Sri Lankan rupee closed weaker at 185 rupees and 20 to 30 cents against the US dollar, while bond yields gained. However, the rupee closed at 184 rupees and 95 cents to 185 rupees against the US dollar yesterday. Here's a brief look at how the local currency traded against other major currencies during the day. Now, the Australian High Commissioner David Hawley says that his government is ready to partner with Sri Lanka, not only to promote tourism, but to also promote other sectors in the country. He made these comments while addressing an event in Trincomalee today.
We've heard very much about what Australia has done here, but really it's about a partnership. We cannot achieve what we are setting out to do unless we are invited. And what we want to say is a very big thank you to all of you who have generously asked the Australian government to come and be part of your community, to look for ideas and to be able to work with you to strengthen those ideas. Australians' aid funding goes in 5-year cycles, and some of you might be concerned that Australia is coming to the end of its 5-year cycle. But I can assure you that we will continue to work with you in the tourism sector and many other sectors. And I think there are many other opportunities for Australia to partner with this wonderful city and also the East more generally.
Taking you to international news very quickly, US President Donald Trump has refused to commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses November's election. Trump also said he believed the election result could end up in the US Supreme Court as he again cast doubt on postal voting. More states are encouraging mail-in voting, citing the need to keep Americans safe from coronavirus. Media reports say that if Trump were to refuse to accept the results of the election, it would take the US into uncharted territory, adding it is not clear how it would play out. However, President Trump's opponent, Democrat Joe Biden, has previously said that in this scenario, the military would be deployed to remove Trump from the White House. That wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching. Good night.